Today we are sewing the Kira hoodie. Firstly, we'll unpack the contents of the bag. You'll find 2 tags, 1 hood, as you can see here, it's folded in half, the back bodice that is also folded in half, 2 sleeves, the front bodice folded in half, 1 pocket, 2 cuffs, and 2 pieces for the hemband. Important note, the front bodice will have a deeper neckline where the back will have a shallower neckline. Our notches indicate our points of action, and the stickers indicate the wrong side of the fabric. So right side, wrong side. Step 1 is to test the tension of your machine and this fabric. So grab your scrap piece of fabric from the outside of the box, making sure to thread your machine and bobbin with the given thread. Sewing the scrap, you'll test the integrity and strength of the stitches. If it looks like this, you're all set. Taking the pocket piece, you're going to fold in the sides to the wrong side of the fabric, just like this. Stitch 1/8 away from the edge all the way through, and then another stitch line 1/8 away from that stitch line. Repeat this on both sides of the pocket. I am sewing 1/8 from that edge, and also making sure to clip my threads at the very end. Once you've done the first stitch line, I like to flip my pocket over and do the second stitch line, remembering it's 1/8 away. This is what it should look like. Next step is to place your front bodice right side up, taking your pocket and flipping it right side down. There will be a marked red line for you to line up the short side of your pocket, and a mark for you to line up the notch. So matching up those lines and making sure the long end is toward the top of the sweater, you'll stitch this on at 3/8. Always remembering to backstitch. Once it looks like this, you'll take your pocket and fold it down toward the hem. At each side, flip in and under toward the wrong side, 3/8. You will then stitch 1/8 from that edge. Repeat this on both sides. As you see here, there's a little notch that once you fold that little bit in, it lines up with. Sewing 1/8 from the edge. And this is what it should look like on both sides. Next, we are going to attach at the shoulders, so lay your front bodice right side up and your back bodice right side down, sticker sides facing you and the table. Where these shoulders line up, we're going to sew 3/8. It is now attached at the shoulders just like this. Fold the hood in half, right sides together, the fold line being the 2 deepest divots, and then fold in half for a second time. While in this shape, it should be open in the top and the bottom, and then you will sew 3/8 along this edge. For this seam, you'll be sewing 4 layers of fabric together. Now taking your hood and pulling from the inside, and flipping it right side out. Once right side out, it should look like this. Take the hood and open it up. Along the bottom edge, we are going to sew 1/4, all the way through. While sewing this seam together, you want to make sure that the fabric is lining up on the top and the bottom, and make sure once you get to the middle that the seams are lined up. Always making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. This is what it should look like. Take the front of the hood and overlap 1/2 inch. I like to keep it attached for now with a pin. Take the hood, flipping it upside down, we will be inserting it into the neckline of the hoodie. You will line up the hood overlap with the front notch on the front bodice, and the back bodice notch with the center back of the hood. Feel free to pin into place for now, as we will be sewing all along these raw edges to attach the hood to the bodice of the hoodie. So once again, sewing these raw edges around together. Sew at 3/8. Your hood is now attached, as you can see with the overlap here. Take the hoodie and now lay completely flat with wrong sides down. So your front bodice should be on your left and your back bodice should be on your right. Making sure those stickers are facing down. The curve between front and back bodice here is where the sleeve will fit into. Lay your sleeve right side down, sticker side up. You will lay the curve against the curve, matching up the notches. The back will have two beside each other, one in the center and one to indicate the front. This is the center notch and the shoulder seam. The two front single notches, and the two back double notches. Make sure on the shoulder seam that the seam allowance is pushed toward the back. To keep in place, you can pin each of these notches into place. The sleeve will get sewn on at 3/8 inch seam allowance, making sure to straighten out the fabric as you go. We are not sewing a curve, you'll just pull and straighten it out, making sure the two pieces of fabric are lined up with each other. Pulling the pins out before I sew that section, just making sure to line up the fabric. This is what it'll look like. Repeat on both sides. Now that the sleeve is attached, with the hoodie facing the wrong side, we are going to sew up the side seam. So matching up that seam, with the seam allowance facing the inside of the sleeve, you'll sew along the sleeve and down the side. Sew at 3/8 seam allowance and making sure the fabric lines up with each other as you go. Repeat on both sides, and this is what it should look like. Now taking the two cuff pieces marked 36, fold right sides together, matching up the short edges. Sew the short edge together at 3/8 seam allowance. Repeat this on both cuffs. This is what it'll look like. Now take the hemband pieces marked 37 and lay right sides together. You will line up the short edges and sew along those short edges at 3/8 seam allowance. Repeat this on both sides. Now take your cuffs and remove the stickers. The cuffs will now be folded in half, making sure that that seam allowance is pressed open into each other so that there's no bulk, and flattening that out. You will now insert the hoodie sleeve into the cuff with all raw edges facing you, making sure to line up the sleeve seam with the cuff seam. Sew these 3 layers together at 3/8 of an inch. The sleeve is slightly larger than the cuff circumference, so you'll just have to slowly ease it in as you go. Repeat this on both cuffs. Once this is complete, you can flip the cuff right side out. This is what it should look like. Now taking the hemband, you can remove the stickers. With the seams pressed open, just like we did on the cuff, you will fold the hemband in half with the raw edges together, so it will form this hoop. For accuracy, line up the seam with the seam and the notch with the notch. This is what it should look like. To keep those points together, you can pin into place. Inserting the hoodie into the hoop, raw edges facing you, line up the seam of the hemband with the seam of the bodice, the front notch of the hemband with the front notch of the hoodie, and the back notch with the back notch. Sew these raw edges together at a 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. Starting at the back notch, sew all the way around. Take your time to make sure all those layers are lined up to each other. Once you go all the way around, your stitch line should evenly meet each other at center back. For the final steps, insert your content care label folded in half into the seam on the left side, a couple inches up from the hem. Sew in along the seam allowance. And insert the serial label on center back. You will just be stitching down the short ends of the label. For the last step, iron your hoodie and make sure it's creaseless. Just like that, you guys are done. I hope you enjoy your hoodie as much as I do. Thank you for sewing with Ciro. We'll see you on the next project.